Today, we delve into a case that remains a chilling enigma. A brutal crime scene discovered in a sleepy resort town that left a community shattered and investigators baffled for decades. This is the story of the Keddie murders. But before we step into the unsettling quiet of Cabin 28, if you find yourself drawn to the strange, the dark, and the mysterious, told in story format, you're in the right place. That's what we do here, with new stories every week. If that sounds like your kind of thing, maybe consider subscribing and turning on all notifications so you don't miss our weekly uploads. Our story takes us to Keddie, a rural resort town nestled in the Sierra Nevada mountains of Northern California. In the spring of 1981, Cabin 28 of the Keddie Resort was home to 36-year-old Glenna Susan Sue Sharp and her children. Sue had moved her family there from Connecticut in 1979 after separating from her husband, seeking a fresh start closer to her brother. The cabin was larger than their previous trailer, a place vacated by the county sheriff himself. Living with Sue were her 15-year-old son John, 14-year-old daughter Sheila, 12-year-old daughter Tina, and her two younger sons, 10-year-old Rick and 5-year-old Greg. It was supposed to be a quiet life, surrounded by the seeming tranquility of the mountains. But over the night of April 11th, going into April the 12th, 1981, that tranquility would be irrevocably shattered by an act of unimaginable violence. April 11th, 1981 seemed like any other Saturday. Sue drove Sheila and Greg to pick up Rick from baseball tryouts in nearby Quincy. On the way, they saw John and his 17-year-old friend Dana Wingate hitchhiking and gave them a ride back towards Keddie. Later that afternoon, around 3:30 p.m., John and Dana were seen hitchhiking back towards Quincy, possibly planning to visit friends. As evening fell, 14-year-old Sheila made plans to spend the night next door at the Seabolt family's cabin, number 27. She left her home shortly after 8 p.m. Sue stayed home in Cabin 28 with her younger sons, Rick and Greg, and their young friend Justin Smart, who was also staying the night. Around 9:30 p.m., 12-year-old Tina, who had been watching TV at the Seabolts, returned home to Cabin 28. That was the last time she was definitively seen alive by neighbors. The following morning, Sunday, April the 12th, around 8 a.m., Sheila returned home from the Seabolts cabin. She opened the door to Cabin 28 and walked into a scene of pure horror. In the living room lay the lifeless bodies of her mother, Sue, her brother John, and his friend Dana Wingate. All three had been bound with medical tape and electrical wiring. Her younger sister Tina was nowhere to be found. Miraculously, in an adjacent bedroom, the three younger boys, Rick, Greg, and their friend Justin, were physically unharmed. Terrified, Sheila fled back to the Seabolt's cabin. Jamie Seabolt reacted quickly, pulling the three unharmed boys out through their bedroom window. He later admitted to investigators that he had briefly entered Cabin 28 through the back door, hoping to see if anyone was still alive. An action that may have unfortunately contaminated the crime scene. The scene inside Cabin 28 was one of extreme brutality. Blood spatter evidence showed the attacks had taken place in the living room. 2 bloodied knives and a hammer were recovered at the scene. Sue Sharp was found lying on her side near the sofa, nude from the waist down. She had been gagged with a blue bandana and her own underwear secured with tape. She had suffered stab wounds to her chest, and her throat had been viciously stabbed horizontally, the wound cutting through her larynx. On the side of her head, investigators found an imprint matching the butt of a Daisy Powerline BB rifle. 15-year-old John Sharp's throat had been slashed. 17-year-old Donna Wingate had suffered multiple head injuries and had been manually strangled. Both John and Donna showed signs of significant blunt force trauma to their heads, consistent with attacks by one or more hammers. Autopsies would later determine Sue and John died from the combination of knife wounds and blunt force trauma, while Dinah died from asphyxiation due to strangulation. And through it all, 12-year-old Tina Sharp was missing. The initial investigation faced immediate challenges. Sheila and the Seabolt family next door reported hearing no commotion during the night. However, a couple in another nearby cabin, number 16, recalled being woken around 1:15 a.m. by sounds they described as muffled screaming. Attention turned to the neighbors. Justin Smart, the young boy who had been unharmed in the bedroom, was the son of Martin Smart, who lived nearby. Martin Smart told investigators that a claw hammer had inexplicably gone missing from his home. Several neighbors, including the Seabolts, recalled seeing an unfamiliar green van parked near the Sharp cabin around 9 p.m. that night. Young Justin Smart provided conflicting accounts of the evening. Under hypnosis, he claimed he had witnessed the murders and saw his mother, Sue, with two men. Based on his descriptions, composite sketches were created by an amateur with no forensic art training, a perplexing choice given the resources typically available to law enforcement. The sketches depicted two men in their late 20s or early 30s, both wearing gold-framed sunglasses. Despite rumors, the county sheriff at the time, Doug Thomas, stated that no illegal drugs or paraphernalia were found in the home, dismissing theories of ritualistic motives or drug trafficking links early on. Tina Sharp's disappearance was initially investigated by the FBI as a possible abduction, though they soon stepped back, leaving it to the California Department of Justice. Extensive searches of the area around Keddie yielded nothing. The mystery of her fate lingered for 3 long years. Then, on April 11th, 1984, exactly 3 years after the murders, a bottle collector hiking near Feather Falls in Butte County, about 60 miles from Keddie, discovered a human skull fragment and part of a jawbone. In June 1984, forensic pathologists confirmed the remains belonged to Tina Sharp, adding another layer of strangeness. The Butte County Sheriff's Office later found a misplaced evidence tape containing an anonymous call received shortly after the discovery of the remains, correctly identifying them as Tina's. Years turned into decades, and the Keddie case grew cold, but never truly forgotten. The cabin itself, number 28, was demolished in 2004. Yet, new leads emerged in the 21st century. Investigators re-examining the case uncovered a letter written by Martin Smart to his wife shortly after the murders, sent from Reno, Nevada. In it, he wrote about their marital struggles, concluding with the chilling sentence, "I've paid the price of your love, and now I've bought it with 4 people's lives." Special investigator Mike Gamberg, assigned to the case years later, stated this crucial letter was somehow overlooked during the initial investigation. Smart, who passed away in 2000, also allegedly made disturbing admissions to a counselor he visited. The counselor claimed Smart confessed to killing Sue and Tina, allegedly stating Tina had to be killed because she had witnessed the whole thing, but denied involvement in the boys' deaths. another man who was reportedly staying with Smart around the time of the murders. John Bobed also became a person of interest. Bobed allegedly had ties to organized crime in Chicago and died in 1988. Then, in March 2016, investigators recovered a hammer from a local pond that matched the description of the one Martin Smart claimed to have lost back in 1981. Sheriff Greg Hagwood, who knew the Sharp family as a teenager, noted its location suggested it was deliberately hidden. Around this time, investigators stated they were examining 6 potential suspects. Perhaps most significantly, in April 2018, investigator Gamberg announced that DNA evidence recovered from a piece of tape at the original crime scene had been matched to a known, living suspect. Despite these developments, the suspicious letter, the alleged confession, the hammer, the DNA match, the Keddie murders officially remain unsolved. 4 lives brutally taken in a small mountain cabin, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions, lingering suspicions, and a chilling reminder of the darkness that can descend on even the most seemingly peaceful places. Thank you so much for joining us for this dive into the strange, dark, and mysterious. Let me know what you thought. All right, until next time, stay safe out there and see you. In 1922, a farmer in Germany noticed footprints in the snow leading to his house, but none leading back out. Days later, he and his entire family were found bludgeoned to death. And the killer? He had been living in the house with their corpses. It's March 31st, 1922. Andreas Gruber, his wife Cecilia, their daughter Victoria, and Victoria's 2 young children, 7-year-old Cecilia and 2-year-old Josef, live on a secluded farm called Hinterkaifeck, deep in the forests of Bavaria, Germany. Just that afternoon, a new maid named Maria Baumgartner had arrived to start working at the farm. Her sister had walked her to the home and waved goodbye. She would be the last person to see anyone there, alive. This small family had always lived quietly, but over the past few weeks, strange things had been happening. A few days earlier, Andreas had discovered a strange newspaper from Munich lying on his property, one no one in the area subscribed to. Then he found a broken door lock on the machine room and, most unnervingly, footprints in the snow leading to the house, but none going back out. And every night, they heard footsteps in the attic. Their former maid had even quit months earlier, terrified, claiming the house was haunted. That night, something unspeakable happened. Andreas, his wife, his daughter Victoria, and her young daughter were each lured, one by one, into the barn. There, someone brutally murdered them using a mattock, a pickaxe-like tool common on farms. The killer then entered the house and murdered the 2-year-old boy Joseph as he slept in his crib, and Maria, the new maid, as she lay in her bed. Then, the killer stayed in the house. He lit fires in the fireplace, fed the animals, and ate meals in the kitchen, all while the 6 bodies lay where they'd fallen. 4 days passed before anyone came to check on them. Neighbors grew concerned after Victoria and little Cecilia didn't show up at church. Eventually, a mechanic named Albert Hofnier visited the farm to fix an engine. He noticed the silence, but went about his work. Finally, a man named Lawrence Schlittenbauer, a former lover of Victoria, and possibly the father of Josef, entered the barn with 2 others, and discovered 4 mangled corpses stacked in hay. Inside the house, he found the bodies of Maria and little Joseph. The scene was like something out of a nightmare. One of the girls had torn her own hair out in fear before she died. Whoever killed the Grubers had stayed in the house for days afterward, and had even confronted a stranger who passed by during the night, blinding him with a lantern. The oven had been lit, and the smoke smelled foul, possibly from burning evidence. A bloodied mattock was later found hidden in the attic. A pocket knife was buried in hay, and several suspects emerged, but no one was ever charged. Theories ranged from an incestuous family secret to a jilted lover, or even a rogue war criminal hiding in the woods. The case was investigated multiple times, in the 1920s, 1950s, and even again in 2007 by modern police cadets. Each time, the same result: no conclusive suspect. To this day, the Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of Germany's most haunting and unsolved crimes. The farm was demolished in 1923. A memorial stands there now, deep in the woods. But the identity of the person who lived with 6 corpses and disappeared without a trace, still a mystery. If you think you know who did it, drop your theory in the comments. And if you want to hear another real-life, unsolved crime, check out this next video on the Isdal woman. Another true case that will leave you chilled. In 2011, a college student walked barefoot out of her friend's apartment at 4:30 a.m. and simply vanished. No witnesses. No answers. Over a decade later, no one knows what happened. But her last few hours, they raise more questions than answers. Lauren Spierer was a 20-year-old Indiana University student studying textiles and fashion merchandising. Originally from Scarsdale, New York, Lauren was well-liked, active in her Jewish student community, and known for her big heart. It was June 3rd, 2011, the first Friday of the summer semester. That night, Lauren went out with friends near her campus apartment in Bloomington, Indiana. Nothing about the evening seemed unusual, until everything spiraled. The catalyst: what went wrong? Lauren had started drinking early with friends, and by midnight, she was visibly intoxicated. Surveillance footage captured her entering Kilroy's sports bar at 1:46 a.m. with a friend, Corey Rossman. But at 2:27 a.m., she was seen exiting the bar, barefoot, having left her shoes and phone behind. She and Rossman walked to her apartment, Smallwood Plaza, arriving at 2:30 a.m. A passerby would later say she looked so drunk he almost intervened. And then, she kept going. From that point on, Lauren's night becomes a chaotic timeline of short visits and unanswered questions. 2:48 a.m. Lauren and Rossman are seen in an alley. Her keys and purse are later found nearby. Shortly after, they arrive at Rossman's apartment. Rossman is so drunk he vomits. His roommate, Michael Beth, puts him to bed. Beth offers Lauren a place to stay. She refuses, saying she wants to return home. 3:30 a.m. Beth calls another friend, Jay, to look after her. Lauren walks over to Rosenbaum's apartment. There, Rosenbaum sees a bruise under her eye. She tells him she doesn't remember how she got it. She uses his phone to call 2 friends. No one answers. And then, 4:30 a.m., Jay says he watched Lauren walk away, heading south down College Avenue, alone, barefoot, drunk, never to be seen again. That morning, her boyfriend Jesse Wolfe texted her. Someone from the bar replied, Lauren had left her phone there. Alarmed, Jesse reported her missing. Within days, local and federal investigators were scouring the area. A massive search began. Rivers, forests, landfills, basements. No body, no phone, no final sighting, no suspects. Investigators found her small amount of cocaine in her room. Rumors emerged that she might have overdosed and her body was hidden. Others suggested a random abduction. Years later, cadaver dogs hit on a barn near a sex offender's house. Nothing was found. Some point to Daniel Messel, a local man who murdered another IU student just 4 years later. Same bar, same Friday night timeline. But no charges were ever brought in Lauren's case. Lauren's parents believe the people she was with, Rossman, Beth, and Rosenbaum, know more than they've shared. All three quickly lawyered up. All refused to take police-issued polygraphs, opting instead for private ones. The family filed civil lawsuits against them, alleging negligence. But the courts dismissed every case, citing lack of evidence and an inability to prove that Lauren's disappearance was their fault. Despite national coverage and over 3,000 tips, the case remains unsolved. Lauren's mother, Charlene, still believes this wasn't a random act. Someone Lauren knew, she says, was responsible. So how does a 20-year-old girl vanish barefoot in a college town filled with cameras and witnesses? That's the part that's strange. Despite timelines, texts, and tips, the mystery of what happened between 4:30 a.m. and dawn remains a chilling black hole, one that her family still lives inside. And to this day, not a single person has been charged. If you think you know what really happened to Lauren Spierer, drop your theory in the comments. Don't forget to hit subscribe. New mysteries every week. In 1970, a hiker and his 2 daughters made their way through a remote Norwegian mountain trail and stumbled upon something that would haunt the country for decades. A woman's charred corpse, surrounded by bizarre clues and a trail of fake identities. Half a century later, nobody knows who she was or who killed her. On the cold morning of November 29, 1970, in Isdal, a rugged valley behind Bergen, Norway, a man hiking with his 2 young daughters spotted something strange among the rocks. It was the body of a woman, lying on her back in the middle of the mountain scree. Her hands were clenched up by her torso. Her entire front side, face, clothing, and chest had been burned beyond recognition. Surrounding her were items you wouldn't expect on a hiking trail. A half-melted umbrella, an empty bottle of liqueur, rubber boots, partially burnt paper, a scarf, and a fur hat soaked in petrol. And one more thing. Every single label had been cut off her clothes. The catalyst. Something's not right. The police arrived quickly and opened file 134/70, a full-scale investigation. They quickly learned that the fire hadn't just destroyed the scene. It had been set deliberately. And then, 3 days later, investigators found something that changed everything. 2 suitcases abandoned at the Bergen railway station. Inside, a bizarre inventory. Multiple wigs, non-prescription glasses, a notepad with code-like writing makeup, coins from Belgium, Switzerland, and the UK, 5 crisp 100 Deutsche Mark bills hidden in a lining, and, again, no labels, no ID, no names. The woman's autopsy was even more unsettling. She had died from a combination of carbon monoxide poisoning and a barbiturate overdose, with 50 to 70 sleeping pills in her system. But there was soot in her lungs, which meant she was still breathing when the fire started. Her neck was bruised, and her teeth had been worked on by a dentist with techniques common in East Asia or Southern Europe. Even stranger, the police decoded her notepad. It was a travel log, and what it revealed was chilling. This woman had been traveling all over Europe, using at least 8 different aliases, all fake names. She'd stayed in hotels in Paris, Oslo, Stavanger, Trondheim, and Bergen, frequently changing rooms and giving inconsistent details about her background. Sometimes she claimed to be Belgian, other times French. She always paid in cash, and she was always alone. As police scrambled to identify her, they released composite sketches and photos of her belongings. Witnesses came forward, saying she spoke multiple languages, often wore wigs, and told different stories depending on who asked. One even remembered her meeting a mysterious man, speaking German in hushed tones. Despite all this, the police closed the case just months later, ruling her death a suicide. But there was no suicide note, and she had gone to great lengths to cover her tracks. And in 2017, nearly 50 years later, new forensic analysis revealed her true origin. Her teeth indicated she was likely born around 1930 in or near Nuremberg, Germany, and grew up near the French-German border, possibly in Belgium. This matched her handwriting, French educated, and confirmed what many had already suspected. This woman might have been a spy. She was buried on February 5th, 1971, in an unmarked grave at Bergen's Møllendal Cemetery, in a zinc coffin so she could be exhumed later if needed. To this day, no family has ever come forward. And now, the theories are endless. Was she part of Cold War espionage? Was her presence linked to Norwegian military sites and Penguin missile testing grounds, which her travel itinerary strangely mirrored? Or was she the victim of a black ops murder disguised as a suicide? In 2019, a Frenchman claimed he had dated the woman just before her death. He described her as a polyglot with a Balkan accent who never shared her real name, and who frequently received strange phone calls from abroad. And just recently, in 2023, a new report hinted that she might have been tied to Swiss banker François Genoux, a known Nazi sympathizer and financier with deep connections in intelligence circles. And if that's true, the Isdal woman may have taken secrets to her grave that the world was never meant to know. So who was the Isdal woman? Imagine 5 friends piling into a car on a Friday night to watch a basketball game. They're excited, joking, sharing snacks, and they never come home. Months later, their bodies are discovered deep in the mountains. One of them survived for weeks, yet never lit the fire. And the 5th, still missing to this day. This is the story of the Yuba County 5, one of the most unsettling unsolved disappearances in California's history. It was the evening of February the 24th, 1978, in Chico, California. The temperature was dropping fast as 5 young men from Yuba County, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Ted Wire, Jack Hewitt, and Gary Matthias, cheered on their favorite team at a college basketball game. The friends were close-knit and shared a love for sports. 4 of them had mild intellectual disabilities. Gary had schizophrenia, but was considered a success story under treatment. They had an important game the next day with their own team, the Gateway Gators. They were excited. Uniforms were already laid out. But after the college game, they made a quick stop at a gas station, grabbed some snacks, and then vanished. 3 days later, their 1969 Mercury Montego was found, abandoned on a snowy mountain road in the remote Plumas National Forest, 70 miles off course from any logical route home. The car was fine, started up instantly, gas tank a quarter full. No signs of damage despite a rugged dirt road. Why had they stopped? That's when things started getting really strange. Search teams combed the forest, but a blizzard quickly halted efforts. Weeks passed, then months. On June 4th, as the snow finally melted, motorcyclists stumbled upon a Forest Service trailer nearly 20 miles from where the car had been. Inside, under 8 blankets, lay Ted Wyer's body, emaciated and frostbitten. He had survived up to 13 weeks. But here's what haunts investigators to this day. There was food, sea rations, heating fuel, matches, clothing. Everything needed to survive was right there, and he used none of it. His shoes were missing. Matthias's shoes were there instead. Wyer didn't die alone. Searchers found Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling dead from hypothermia, 11 miles from the car, one on each side of the road. Jack Hewitt's remains were discovered a few miles farther, scattered by animals. But Gary Matthias, the only one with military experience, was gone. All that remained were his shoes in the trailer. And then there were the sightings. One man, suffering a heart attack in his car that same night, said he saw flashlights outside his window. A group of people. He called out for help. The lights turned off. Silence. Another woman swore she saw the 5 men the next day, buying food at a gas station in Brownsville, 30 miles from the mountain. Police found her credible. Her description matched. So, what happened? The final detail may be the most disturbing. To this day, Gary Matthias has never been found. No trace, no remains, no sightings, only his shoes, and endless questions. If you made it to the end, consider subscribing for more strange, dark, and mysterious stories like this one. Hit that like button, like you're trying to survive a cold night in the mountains. And if you know someone who'd find this story chilling, share it with them. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.